Good afternoon, everybody. It is Thursday, February 19th. Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. Today's work session will review 6 of the 7 subcategories within the transportation category of the FY27 to 32 CIP. These subcategories are highway maintenance, traffic improvements, bridges, parking, roads, and pedestrian facilities and bikeways. The 7th category, mass transit, will be covered at the committee's March 2nd work session. The county executive is recommending a $2.28 billion in expenditures for the transportation category within the 6-year period. In May of 2025, the council approved $1.83 billion in expenditures. So the recommended amendments transmitted by the county executive last month constitute an increase of $455.5 million, nearly a 25% increase. And most of that increase is due to the higher assumed GO bond funding and increased assumed federal aid. So for today's work session, we are going to go through all of these items, 6 of the 7 subcategories. There is a 291-page packet that was compiled. Thank you very much, Mr. Kenny, and I'll turn it over to you to start on page 1.
Thank you. And I'll note we're not going through all 291 pages today. These are, most of them are the project forms for reference. But I appreciate the shout out. The chair covered a good deal of the overview information, so I won't go back through that in terms of on page 2 of the staff report, the total increase. Table 1 breaks down how those increases are divvied up between each of the subcategories, the 6 we're covering today, and the mass transit subcategory, which we'll cover on March 2nd. $439 million of this $455 million increase can be accounted for by $295 million increase in GO bond funding and $144 million in assumed federal aid. The GO bond breakdown in terms of increase can be found on table 2 at the bottom of page 2 of the staff report. As the chair touched on, the executive's recommended increase in GO bond funding assumes a significant increase in GO bond issuances, $2.19 billion over the 6-year period. On Tuesday, February 3rd, the council approved its spending affordability guidelines, which returned the FY27 to 32 GO bond issuances to the current level of $1.8 billion to be assumed in the CIP. This creates a mismatch between the assumptions made by the executive in his recommended CIP and the approved spending affordability guidelines, and will require the council through its process to reconcile these reduced expenditures with the SAG in terms of getting within the GO bond assumed issuances. The executive is recommending bridges category, all of which will be covered as individual items throughout this staff report. In a number of points in the staff report, the council staff cites the work of the Infrastructure Funding Working Group to cite what is called acceptable annual replacement costs. This is a term that is familiar from the Infrastructure Maintenance Task Force that the Infrastructure Funding Working Group has been updating. So the IFWG, which is how it's referred to in this packet, has an interim report that will be presented to the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee on Thursday, February 26th. This data is a very small part of that very large interim report, but council staff thought it'd be useful to cite here as that is complete. There's some more information in the packet in terms of what that level exactly means, and it will be cited throughout. The Planning Board transmitted its requested amendments to the CIP to the Council on February 13th, a number of requested additions. These can be found on circle pages 249 to 268. And planning staff from the Transportation Planning Division is here to answer committee questions as needed, as are, of course, the representatives from MCDOT and the Office of Management and Budget covering each of the subcategories we're going to talk about today. And we'll get folks rotating in and out as needed. So starting with the first of our subcategories covering today, the highway maintenance subcategory. This subcategory funds a continuum of road maintenance activities throughout the county that range from permanent patching in terms of just basic patching of deficiencies to rehabilitation, which functions as a complete sort of replacement of a road, including sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and subgrade reconstruction. So you'll see those terms referenced, especially for residential and rural roads. The executive is recommending a $180 million increase in the highway maintenance subcategory, funded largely by GO bonds. This is aside from the mass transit category, which we'll cover on March 2nd, the largest single subcategory that accounts for that the increase in the GO bonds issued and spent in this recommended CIP. Starting to get into the projects here, there are 3 projects that address residential and rural roads. This is where that continuum of repair and replacement projects come together. These projects, because they all address the same deficiencies, just at different scales and on different timelines, and can be considered together, which is why council staff included each of these together in Table 3 on page 4 of the staff report. The IFWG, the working group, assumes an acceptable annual funding level to achieve the goals for pavement condition index at $68 million, $68.7 million annually. The approved level between these 3 projects is $24 million. The county executive recommends a level of $56.7 million and in FY27, and then from FY28 to 32, a level of $47.2 million. This is not getting all the way up to the level of recommended in the infrastructure funding working group, but DOT can talk about this in more detail, but these levels are intended to match and maintain the current pavement condition on average, the pavement condition index around the county. So this constitutes a $16 million increase over the 6-year period for the permanent patching project, a $94.9 million increase over the 6 years for resurfacing of residential and rural roads, and a $40.5 million increase over the 6 years for residential and rural road rehabilitation. So I will pause here for these 3 projects.
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Director Conklin, welcome to you and your team and OMB. Just taking a high-level look at the resurfacing, if the IFWG is requesting nearly $69 million and we're currently allocating about 24, the county executive's recommendation of that is nearly double. But what does that mean in terms of actual resurfacing and road work?
Sure. I can give you a little bit of information about how this process works that we've talked about before. There's a pavement survey that's done every other year on the residential and rural network, and then in the alternate year it's done on the arterial network. And through that, the condition of the pavement is indexed on a 0 to 100 scale. Right now we're just below, I believe, 70 PCI on our network, below our target PCI, and we looked at a variety of scenarios with the executive, including being able to achieve the target. Obviously, those require more resources and were not found to be fiscally possible in the CE's recommendation. What this allows us to do is cover increased material costs, which is a component of the increase here. It's a relatively minor component. and it allows us to expand the amount of repaving that we're doing. So at the current budgeted level, we're able to resurface around 28 or restore 28 or so miles of pavement. I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong column. About 82 miles of pavement for the rural and residential network. This roughly doubles the amount of rural and residential pavement preservation activities we're able to do, and allows us to retain that current pavement condition. We're at a point on the curve where the pavement will start to deteriorate more rapidly without investment, and it's important, in our opinion, that we stay on the side of that point that we are, where we're able to retain the integrity of the pavement countywide and not let it get to that lower PCIs, which require a higher level of investment to restore and allow, and we would be able to do much less per year as that PCI continues to deteriorate. So I can expand more if there are other unanswered questions.
No, I think that I appreciate that. I think the most important point was the 80 miles to 160, nearly doubling that.
It's actually a little bit more than that. It looks like it's 192.
Okay. Again, just trying to figure out what the large budgetary item turns into for the residents of Montgomery County. 102 miles repaved.
192.
100, I wrote 192. Yes. Thank you. Councilmember Balcom.
Yes, thank you. So there is the issue. I brought this issue up several years ago, and then a member of the Rustic Roads Committee brought it up again now, and that's the differentiation between residential roads and rural roads, and the idea that rural roads get pushed back to the bottom. And so I don't know if you have an opinion on that. And
Yeah.
Like I said, we had talked about it years ago, and bringing it up again.
Sure, it's not the case that they get pushed to the bottom. The pavement condition survey covers the residential, rural, and arterial roads, and the repairs are targeted where the repairs are needed and where that investment is most effective in extending the pavement life. We talked about whether or not it would make sense to separate those programs. Having them combined gives us the most flexibility for targeting the investment where it's needed the most, regardless of which type of road it is. And in discussion of this, our Highway Services Division tells us that the rural roads are actually in a better condition than our entire residential network. So the executive's recommendation is to leave the program structured as they are, even though there's been obviously question and discussion about whether they should be separated.
Right. And then, so from the perspective of how do you decide, when deciding what road to prioritize, you do look at the usage of the road in addition to the condition of the road.
There's not a tremendous difference in the usage of a residential street compared to a rural road. They're both our lower volume roads, and they're already separated from the primary arterial network, which are the higher volume roads. That's not really a driving factor. What's really a driving factor is the condition of the pavement and the efficiency of replacing it. So in residential roads, we may repair some roads that don't have that much deterioration because we're there and we're going to take advantage of not needing to mobilize again to pave in the same area. The same is true for rural. We'll identify efficient packages of paving to do that will cover a variety of different PCI conditions that we might see on a particular road. But the process is the same, and they compete the same in our prioritization.
Okay, can we get a sense of how much money is spent on rural roads and some history on that?
Sure, I don't have it in front of me.
Of course.
Certainly, yeah.
And from the perspective of, I know that every part of the county thinks that they're not getting enough or their share or being left behind, right? So, but we hear it, we hear it, and I think there's some legacy about not touching rural roads in the past, and I think that idea has changed. Not rural roads, rustic roads, and I think that adds to the debate about rural roads. So it would be helpful to see what that over time, whatever time frame you think appropriate, of the investment in the residential roads versus rural roads and the mileage. So how many miles are we talking when we talk about rural roads? How many miles are we talking about in residential, and what that investment is?
Sure.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Without any other questions on these, Mr. Kenny, you want to keep walking through it?
Thank you. And I forgot to say at the beginning, we have council staff recommendations at the end of each of these sections, pending committee suggested adjustments. Moving on to the resurfacing primary and arterial. We have all of the, our resurfacing work on primary and arterial in one project. This project provides for the systematic milling, pavement repair, concrete resurfacing, and revitalization of the just over 1,000 lane miles of county-owned primary and arterial roads. The executive recommends a $72 million or recommends $72 million over the 6-year period. This is a $28 million or 65% increase for this project. Similarly, for the residential and rural portions, this is used to cover increasing costs as well as get to the level of investment to maintain the current pavement condition of primary and arterial roads. This is comes out to about a $14.5 million investment in FY27 and $11.5 million annually from FY28 to 32. The Infrastructure Funding Working Group estimates a $16.7 million acceptable annual replacement cost. That would, so the current level is of spending is reducing the pavement quality. The executive's recommended level is intended to maintain the current pavement quality, and then the working group's recommendation would achieve the goal, the standard of close to 70 pavement condition index.
Keep going.
The moving on to the resurfacing park roads and bridge improvements. This project currently provides for minor structural and non-structural repairs and rehabilitation of park roads and bridges by MCDOT via a 2007 Memorandum of Understanding. This MOU was amended between Parks and MCDOT in 2025 to move the responsibility for park roads to parks, and as well as some bridge responsibilities, but to keep most of the bridges, these 15 vehicular bridges within parks, into the domain of within the domain of MCDOT. So the effect of this is to reduce all funding to this particular project, and you'll see later in this staff report a new project for park bridges, which takes up MCDOT's continuing responsibility. See the roads component show up in the parks CIP. Moving on to sidewalk and curb replacement, the executive recommends $47 million over the 6-year period. This is a $4.3 million increase to the project over the 6-year period. This increase is to fund keep the same level of sidewalk and curb replacement as what we have currently, but to address increasing costs and construction of materials and contractual labor. The Infrastructure Funding Working Group estimates a $16.2 million annual level for this project to achieve county goals, but the executive's level recommended falls just about half of that at $7.8 million annually.
Mr. Kenny, just quick question for Director Conklin. For folks who are watching, this item is on the upkeep and maintenance of existing sidewalks, and we will get to at a later point, to new sidewalk projects.
That's correct.
Okay, just
correct. Okay. And finally, for the highway maintenance subcategory, is the street tree preservation project, which provides for the preservation of the street tree canopy through routine tree maintenance, with the goal of reducing costs in the long run of damage from overgrown or in trees that are can cause damage. The executive does not recommend changing the funding level for this project, although this project is different from the rest in this subcategory in that it's funded by current revenue rather than GO bonds. The Infrastructure Funding Working Group does estimate an $18.7 million annual replacement cost. The county's got a lot of street trees. And the executive's current level is $3.3 million annually.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. I had a question on the street tree preservation, just given we know how hard it is to keep our street trees preserved and in place, and in particular given the storms that we had this winter. I just wanted to ask Director Conklin to talk a little bit more about the funds. I mean, obviously knowing funding is tight, but these are not, this doesn't, as Mr. Kenny pointed out, come under our GO bonds. Where we are with our street tree preservation, and does the department have concerns given the hard winter we've had?
Sure. So to talk about the weather response for tree damage, that is not covered by this activity. That's covered by the weather NDA, and also storm supplementals that come as we address tree damage. And tree planting is addressed separately as well. Those activities are not part of this. This is a request-driven pruning program by and large, which is helpful to maintaining the trees in the right shape and balance so that they're the most stable. We would obviously love to have more resources here to do more of that work, because it does reduce the number of truck and bus strikes of tree branches and allows us to keep the canopy in a better shape. But the more important hazardous tree response activities are not this program.
Great. That's very, very helpful. Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you. So for sake of a summary, Table 4 on the top of page 7 of the staff report summarizes these funding levels versus the working group estimates of optimal spending for the highway maintenance subcategory. But otherwise, council staff suggests the committee recommend approving this subcategory of the executive's recommended CIP.
Without objection.
Thank you. Moving on to the traffic improvements subcategory, the executive is recommending a $682,000 or 0.5% increase to this subcategory. This largely reflects a small increase to the street lighting project to address increased costs, but largely retains FY25 to 30 approved levels. This is, contrasting this relatively minor increase from that major increase of the highway maintenance program, as these are both, level of effort maintenance projects. The highway maintenance program is a lot more flexible and easier to spend than the traffic improvements program, as it's done more systematically and less based on request, as many of the traffic improvements projects are. And these resources can be are a lot more easier to dole out in terms of the programmatic increases. The Infrastructure Funding Working Group recommends annual acceptable replacement costs for the guardrail, street lighting, and traffic signal projects that are roughly equivalent to what are recommended by the executive here. Hence another reason for the difference in the increase in spending. This is the first subcategory where we have these on the top of page 8, the consent projects. These are included by council staff as projects in a given subcategory, and this similar list will appear in future subcategories in this work session. Projects that either are not recommended to be changed, or have minor operational changes or increases for inflation. But if the committee wishes to speak on any of those, feel free to stop me and we can do so.
On the consent, that's what you noted? Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to pick up one of those items, and that is the street lighting within there. I know a number of us on this committee and within the council have submitted testimony in Annapolis about streetlights and about the county and municipalities being able to own and adapt some of that lighting, because as we look at our investment in infrastructure, modernizing some of those efforts, and particularly that PEPCO infrastructure. And so, Director Conklin, you and your team, can you provide an update on what some of that acquisition and adaptation might be for some of the streetlights in the county?
I certainly can. So first, just one clarification. These projects include both replacement and some new facilities, so it's slightly different than the highway category, which is almost all replacement and maintenance. There's expansion of these systems in these CIPs as well. And then in terms of the streetlight replacement programs themselves, the county owns about half the streetlight inventory that's that serves the county in unincorporated areas, and those lights are all high efficiency LED fixtures. That program was completed a couple years ago. There are still tariffs, which are the rates that the utilities provide for the maintenance of the facilities that provide the power to those fixtures and for the power consumption themselves. It's a different relationship for the utility-owned fixtures. Those are generally the ones that are on utility poles or in Councilmember Balcomb's portion of the county, the Potomac Edison streetlights, some of which are below grade powered, some of which are above grade on telephone poles. And there are also Baltimore Gas and Electric serviced streetlights in the eastern part of the county. So we have 3 different utilities that own and maintain streetlight infrastructure. They all charge the county on a tariff basis for those streetlights. Over the past several years, there's been a number of initiatives to get the inventories cleaned up of those streetlights, and that's underway now principally by PEPCO to understand which streetlights are MDOT SHA responsibility, which are county responsibility, which are municipal responsibility. And that work is underway. And as you mentioned, there's legislation in Annapolis that the county executive has also supported and supported the last time it was before the General Assembly as well, which would give the county and municipalities the opportunity to purchase and replace utility-owned streetlights. For municipalities that may have a small inventory, this can be very advantageous because they can combine a small inventory that they may own with a small inventory of utility lights and have a really comprehensive maintenance program for that and drive the energy efficiency. It's more complicated for the county with the 3 utility relationship and with the age and maintenance requirements for these streetlights, many of which are on utility poles that are crowded with other utility providers and the high voltage transmission. So we are supportive of the initiatives to give flexibility and opportunity for municipalities and the county to take over these streetlights and replace them with high efficiency fixtures. As new lights are being installed by the utilities, they are high efficiency fixtures. And as old fixtures fail and are replaced, they are high efficiency fixtures. And if these laws pass in the General Assembly, I think the county would look to take on some strategic testing of how it works for us to purchase and replace those streetlights before we embarked on the full 30,000 fixture program. But clearly, people with smaller inventories have more to gain and a better benefit from that program if it passes, and we hope it does this year in Annapolis.
Thank you for that overview, and noting that of the 50% of the lights that are out there that are owned by the county, they are efficient. We're just working to increase that number countywide among the 3 different utilities as well.
Yes, 100% of ours are.
Yeah, very good.
Yep.
Duly noted. Thank you. Mr. Kenny, I think we can continue.
Thank you. Moving on, there are 2 projects that council staff have pulled out of the consent list. These both projects are being recommended by the executive to be zeroed out and removed from the. These are legacy projects. First, the White Flint traffic analysis and mitigation project. This project was a requirement of the approved White Flint sector plan and provides for traffic analysis and mitigation. In White Flint, the approved CIP had $81,000 a year for this project. This project has been ongoing for 14 years and was largely just doing traffic counts that had largely not changed, which led the executive to recommend removing it from the CIP, pending future strategies for this area. And second, the White Oak Local Area Transportation Improvement Program, or the White Oak LATIP for short. This was, of course, part of the conversation in the TIF for Viva White Oak and the development district there. This project was largely a placeholder with $101 million beyond 6 years. This was the total amount of the LATIP that was expected to be collected. Nothing has been collected to date. So as a sort of just cleanup exercise for now and until additional funds can be collected and programmed, the executive is recommending removing this funding from beyond 6 years from this project.
So I just wanted to comment on the White Oak one. It doesn't eliminate the LATIP program. That program remains in place, and as fees are due, they would continue to be collected. We would just program them to projects as those funds are collected as individual projects, rather than presenting the entire program. And this $101 million is actually an outdated number from the 2017 estimate for that. So that number in and of itself isn't reflecting the value of the program anymore. And we think this is better managed as a funding source that's applied to capital projects rather than as a standalone CIP administratively. So that's the recommendation. But the program remains in place.
In other words, you're saying that the infrastructure for White Oak with this project will be associated with the TIF and not with this PDF per se? No.
With the LATIP. So the LATIP is
the LATIP will be associated with the TIF, with that project.
The LATIP fee would be a funding source for projects that are identified within that program, but it wouldn't have its own PDF, which hasn't received funds and nothing has advanced.
That's right. Okay.
Within that since 2017.
Right. Okay. Councilmember Balcom.
Thanks. Can you just clarify the interface between the TIF and the LATIP, right? Because I thought I understood
That was the
until
better
you
question
just.
than what I was trying to get at, but yes.
So I'm not as familiar with the TIF. I know you all are because you've been working on it on a regular basis. The White Oak Local Area Transportation Improvements was a host of intersection improvements, some transit service improvements, a couple transit facilities, walkways and bikeways in the White Oak Science Gateway Plan area that would have otherwise potentially been triggered by development review applications and the responsibility of individual applicants to fund. There may be some overlap with things that are funded by the TIF, but my understanding of the TIF is it's largely funding on-site infrastructure and immediately adjacent infrastructure to the Viva White Oak project, which there may be some small overlap, and you may know better than I do, Stephen, but by and large, this program is covering a wider geographic area.
And let me just say to your question, this was the question that I asked at that joint committee, recognizing that the projects were just being done with a different funding source, but then more directly, the LATIP had not been updated given the parameters and the project scope, right?
Right. So the LATIP is intended for any given project to cover offsite improvements that, is sort of a substitute for the LATR, the directly constructed. So both the LATIP and the TIF are both in White Oak. We have two very kind of unique systems of funding infrastructure throughout the project, throughout the county. But the TIF, as Director Conklin mentioned, is largely for on-site improvements. Although partially covered in the TIF are three intersection improvements that were identified in the LATIP and sort of would be funded by LATIP fees, but are the developer of Viva White Oak is proposing to build directly as offsite improvements to receive credit against their what would be owed as LATIP fees. These are the intersections of US 29 and Industrial, US 29 and Tech Road, and then Industrial Parkway and Tech Road. So these are separate programs, but given that it's all sort of pulling from one big list of master plan improvements, there's obviously a lot of overlap, and sort of the TIF process has been an effort in managing and prioritizing those improvements, as the chair mentioned, was discussed at the joint committee.
And I
Thank
do
you.
understand that we did transmit an updated LATIP, but I don't think the council has taken that up.
No, I don't think so.
Correct. It's not been taken up. This is that'd be a separate project.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, on to bridges.
On to bridges. The county's bridge infrastructure investments are federally regulated and partially federally funded through the county's biennial bridge inspection program. Increases, as can be seen, the $20.9 million increase recommended by the executive over the 6 years are due to bridges having reached the end of their useful life or otherwise requiring repair. We'll go through the increases, some of which are indicated on the consent list, and others we'll go through one by one. There are $35 million in the approved and $39 million in the recommended. For beyond 6 years, these can all be attributed to the Dorsey Mill Road Bridge project, which is pending applications for permits by the developer of the Black Hills subdivision. So this is sort of a separate from the broader bridge program. Unless there are any comments or questions about the consent projects, we'll move on to the bridge design project, which provides for the ongoing studies for bridge projects identified under consideration for inclusion in the capital improvements program. This project serves as a transition stage for a project between identification for need and inclusion as a standalone project in the CIP. The executive recommends a $44,000 increase within the six-year period, but in general a $4.6 million increase to this project. This is due to the addition of funds to complete design for the 5 new bridge projects within the 6-year period that will be identified below. Moving on to the bridge preservation program. This project includes actions or strategies that prevent, delay, or reduce deterioration of bridge elements, and just generally keep bridges in good working condition, pending full replacement or rehabilitation. The executive recommends a $2.6 million or 80% increase within the 6-year period for this project, with a $444,000 increase in annual funding level to match construction cost inflation. This also matches the working group requested optimal level for this project. Moving on to the Brighton Dam Road Bridge project. This project is reflecting a 2-year delay caused by ongoing negotiations with Howard County and WSSC Water, which are relevant in this case. The new permanent turnaround site for fire trucks in Howard County, on the Howard County side that was included in the prior approved version of this project, will no longer be included in the project scope. Moving on to the Brookville Road Bridge project, for which the executive recommends a $3 million increase to fully replace rather than just rehabilitate this bridge, so a change in scope. This is due to complications regarding the CSX freight rail tracks that run underneath and certain requirements that CSX has.
Councilmember Stewart has a question.
Great, thank you for the update on this bridge project. A couple of questions I had were regarding the timing of the bridge replacement, if you know that, just given with the opening of the Purple Line, pedestrian detours in this area, and as you all well know, the future of the Maryland 97 SHA project that's not too far from here. So now that this is moved from a rehabilitating to an actual replacement? Do we know timing or not yet?
It's currently scheduled for FY '28 and beyond, but we don't have yet coordination with the other potential projects that are in the area. Hopefully the Purple Line will be done before this starts. And the sequencing and management of traffic and maintaining pedestrian access is going to be important as we get into the design of that, but those details aren't defined yet.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the Burnt Hill Road Bridge project. This is the first of the new projects in this recommended CIP. This project provides for the replacement of the existing Burnt Hill Road Bridge over Little Bennett Creek in Clarksburg. The existing bridge was built in 1955 and has reached the end of its useful life. The road and bridge will be completely closed to vehicular traffic during construction in FY '29 with traffic detoured. Moving on to the Green Tree Road Bridge project, which provides for the replacement of the existing Green Tree Road Bridge over Bulls Run in Bethesda. The road and bridge will remain open to vehicular traffic during construction. Moving on to the Park Bridge Improvements project. I'd mentioned earlier the updated MOU between MCDOT and Parks. This project reflects MCDOT's ongoing responsibilities for 15 vehicular bridges on Parks roads, and is reflected as a level of $209,000 per year as a level of effort. The Park Lawn Entrance Bridge project provides for the replacement of the existing Park Lawn Entrance Bridge over Rock Creek in Rockville. This is also a new project. It will also require relocation of the Park Lawn Entrance and Rock Creek Trail within the vicinity of the bridge. And a temporary trail alignment will be required both east and west of the proposed bridge during construction, which is expected to occur in FY '31. The Valleywood Drive Bridge project is another new project which would provide for the replacement of the existing Valleywood Drive Bridge over Joseph's Branch, approximately 0.4 miles east of the intersection of Veers Mill Road and Connecticut Avenue in Wheaton. The bridge will be closed to traffic for construction from June 2028 to September 2028. And finally, within this category is the Zion Road Bridge project. The final of the new projects recommended, it provides for the replacement of the existing Zion Road Bridge over Hollings River in Brookville. The bridge and road will be closed to traffic during construction in FY '30 and '31. Council staff suggests the committee recommend approving the bridges subcategory of the executive's recommended CIP.
Without objection.
Thank you. Moving on to the parking subcategory on page 13 of the staff report. The executive recommends, this is the one program where the executive is recommending a decrease in the 6-year period. However, this is slightly misleading as this decrease is largely due to higher levels of funding for specific needs that occurred in FY '26 or FY '25 and FY '26 that are now moving out of the CIP and returning to our normal annual levels. So this is not a real material decrease in the parking program. Beyond that, there aren't many material changes in the parking subcategory. However, the PLD enterprise funds in Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton will come up again for discussion with the operating budget, where there may be additional capital improvement program changes requested, along with conversations about funding levels. So expect more on this with the operating budget as we get further amendments.
On that point, just real quick, there have been ongoing conversations at this committee regarding PLD and funding. And I'm going to pick up or read into some of the comments that Mr. Kenny noted. Should we expect any changes to the PLD model in the next budget?
There may be some changes in the use of PLD generated funds, but I don't anticipate any major transformational changes. And the Silver Spring PLD will continue to be extremely financially constrained, with Bethesda and Wheaton being healthier. But there's no fundamental restructuring anticipated. But again, we're 3 weeks away from final.
Understood. Just
details.
trying to read the tea leaves or pick up on what's being noted. Okay. March 15th is closer than we know.
It's right around the corner.
Mr. Kenny.
Moving on from the consent list on page 13, we have 4 projects called out here, 2 of which have minor changes, 2 of which are new. So the first of those new projects is the Advanced Digital Construction Management System. This project programs $1 million in federal aid to expand MCDOT's successful precise 3D survey and engineering of transportation infrastructure pilot project. Essentially, advanced digital surveying and engineering and design software that allows the county, not just in the parking subcategory, but across transportation activities, to more efficiently do design and engineering work.
Can you explain precise 3D?
Sure. The basis of it is 3D scanning of infrastructure and identification of components, and then through that you're able to inventory those components and when they've been fixed and when they might need to be fixed, and have a better chance of forestalling element failures and having a better record of the maintenance activities that have been occurred. And this is useful across, as Mr. Kenny mentioned, the parking garages in particular that have the most mechanical systems and the largest structural elements, but they're also useful for bridges and other infrastructure we have. We just did a pilot during the most recent snowstorm of the Veers Mill Road corridor to identify locations where snow removal is going to be more critical and where expanded snow clearing might be needed with implementation of the BRT. So it's being able to get these sort of real-time detailed 3D images of infrastructure so that we can better plan for the maintenance of that infrastructure in the long term.
And is this satellite imagery or?
No, it's a LiDAR scanner, so it's a mobile scanner technology that can either be vehicle mounted or on a tripod in a facility.
Okay, great. Mobile. Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to the Farm Women's Market parking garage. This is a long ongoing project. The executive recommendation does not change the project scope or funding, but reflects a 2-year delay in construction of this project from FY26 to FY28. The delay is caused by ongoing negotiations with the developer, which may alter the scope. MNC PPC and the town of Chevy Chase are also involved in this project. This is a complex arrangement here.
To talk a little bit about the negotiations, we have agreements that are settled in principle and terms. The developer has been looking at the scope of their own project, and that's really the cause for the delay in this. It's not so much that the county and parks and the developer haven't reached an agreement.
So everything had been agreed upon, but because of the scope of the project is changing, it's
Correct.
possibly all changing.
Those agreements weren't signed because the developer identified some potential scope changes to their component of the project that they wanted to iron out before we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Moving on to the other new project within this category, the Parking Silver Spring Public Electric Vehicle Charging Infrastructure Project, which will provide for the installation of level 2 and direct current fast charging to support long and short-term parking needs in county-owned parking garages in Silver Spring. 80% or $850,000 of this project will be funded by a federal earmark. It's a federally funded, largely, project. And finally, the parking Wheaton facility renovations project, which provides for the restoration of or improvements to Wheaton parking facilities to address deterioration due to use and age. The executive recommends a $382,000 increase within the sixth period, or call it a $106,000 net increase over FY25 to 30 approved levels for legacy parking meter replacement within Wheaton parking facilities. This is in addition to the supplemental appropriation, which is also before this committee today, which programs $35,000 roughly in state aid to install LED lighting in several Wheaton area parking garages. So the committee will take a look at that after this CIP review, but wanted to note it here as part of what's being reflected in the FY27 to 32 recommendation. All right.
And that's it for
That's it
that item?
That's it for parking.
Okay, without objection.
Thank you. Moving on to the roads subcategory, the executive is recommending a $28.7 million increase, a near doubling of the roads program, largely for the largely reflecting the inclusion of the Observation Drive project within the 6 years, which we'll get to below. A number of consent projects on page 15, most of which have no changes. I will note where the White's Ferry project reflects that the project is complete. This obviously the White's Ferry is not complete. The CIP project is phasing out due to the nature of the incentive funding expiring if not agreed to by the property owners by July 1st, 2026. So moving
Do you want to answer
on.
about the non-complete project? No, you're okay.
But the money remains out there. For the remainder of FY26. So the North High Street Extended project, which provides for the design and construction of a roadway extension of North High Street to Morningwood Drive in Olney. The executive recommends a $1.3 million increase to this project to account for WSSC water relocation design and rising construction costs. So a slightly increased amount here. Moving on to Observation Drive Extended, which, as I noted, is the largest part of the roads program in the recommended CIP, which Observation Drive Extended provides for the design and construction of Observation Drive between its current terminus and Milestone across Little Seneca Creek through the Linthicka Family Farm and Comsat properties to connect with Stringtown Road. It also provides for design and construction to extend Little Seneca Parkway to intersect with this new alignment to create a road network through these properties. There are a lot of moving pieces with Observation Drive, both in the recommendations within the Clarksburg Gateway Sector Plan, which are currently under review by the PHP committee, as well as ongoing design efforts by MCDOT. These design efforts are this CIP does not reflect any final design or alignment, a lot of which will be decided by recommendations in the master plan as approved by the council, but reflects an estimate in project costs to begin construction in FY32, and for design to begin in FY28 and complete in FY31. The part of the discussion by the PHP committee regarding Observation Drive Extended has been about the proposed Milestone Comsat East Clarksburg connector, corridor connector premium bus service, as recommended in the corridor forward I-270 transit plan. The challenge being that the design and construction of Observation Drive Extended will likely occur prior to the implementation of this premium transit service, and so figuring out where or how in terms of phasing to include the recommended dedicated bus lanes. The master plan includes some flexible language to allow MCDOT to design the roadway in an interim fashion if there's not going to be transit service immediately, to then allow for dedicated transit lanes in the ultimate condition to be allowed later on. The PHP committee has given a preliminary, has made sort of preliminary language changes to the master plan to ask that MCDOT evaluate transit service prior to constructing Observation Drive Extended, and if those analyses prove that transit service is warranted, that the dedicated transit lanes be added, so that there doesn't have to be a second effort or phase of this project beyond what we're looking at here to achieve that ultimate condition. So this is sort of a challenge in moving pieces, both between the design of the facility and the planning of transit service, and also with our review, with the council's review, between the review of the master plan and the CIP. So council staff at the top of page 17 has provided language to add to the end of the project description for this project based on the current recommendations of the PHP committee. Council staff will bring back changes if the council review of the master plan adjusts that approach, but this would put the CIP project in line with what is currently in the council's review of the master plan. There's a lot of moving pieces there. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Malcolm.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank, we have planning staff here. Thank you for your work on this very important project, and of course, Director Conklin. And also just for my colleagues, there's been significant change in the alignment of the road. And my assumption is that's not included in here in any of the cost estimates, correct?
Yeah, this is still a placeholder estimate. I mean, It's been finessed a little bit based on the change in assumptions about where the road is, but it's not linked to any preliminary engineering for a new alignment.
Right. So I just wanted to mention that. So when we look at it again next year, the following year, we might see a very different number on this.
Possibly, yes.
Good and bad, right? It's going to be a shorter road, but costs will go up.
There's also, I'm sorry, Councilmember Malcolm, there's also the potential for developer participation if the redevelopment activities are happening concurrent with or ahead of the implementation of this road. It might end up being a little cheaper because of that.
That was my next question.
Okay, great.
From the perspective of the land acquisition, so I would expect, and I think that both owners of the bulk of this road is two property owners, and my understanding is that this will be deeded over, and it could happen way before the FY31.
That's the assumption that's included in the funding schedule for this project, is that there is not a significant amount of land acquisition to build the road.
Okay, great, super, thanks.
And to be clear, we have no objection to the proposed language that Mr. Kenny described.
Great. I'll defer to the
I could
district
talk
council
all
member
day.
again.
I think that, yeah, that language, we had a long discussion at the PHP committee about how transit would fit on this road, and I think we ended up in a flexible space for DOT and the master plan. I do think that, one of the sticky points for me was whether at the point in time when we build the road, whether we have the funding for the transit. And I just want to continue to push and say, we've been talking about transit in the Up County and transit in Clarksburg for a very long time. And so once we have this road in place and the capacity for transit, then we need to come through with the funding for that transit. So, thank you.
Well said.
Thank you. So the
Without
committee's
objection,
approval
we'll
of
accept
that
that.
council staff recommendation. Thank you. Moving on to the final project of the roads subcategory is the Summit Avenue extension, which provides for the extension of Summit Avenue in Kensington from Pliers Mill Road to Farragut Road, the improvement of Farragut Road, the reconstruction of the intersection of Connecticut Ave and University Boulevard and Farragut Road as well. The executive recommends delaying this project by 2 years, keeping the initial planning, design, and supervision funds within the 6 years, but moving that back from FY25 or FY30 to now the last year of this CIP, FY32. Based on that, that's relative to what the council approved in the FY26 CIP amendments. There was also a more thorough design and construction schedule within the 6 years that was approved in the FY25 capital budget. So there's been a good deal of change as fiscal capacity has dictated over the past couple council reviews of the capital improvements program. And this is what the executive has recommended for FY27 to 32.
District council member.
Thank you. I feel like it's Groundhog Day. So I sent a letter to my colleagues, from myself and Councilmember Friedson, who was the former district council member for this area, asking that we put this back in as it was in the last CIP. In particular, I will also note that the planning board also recommends reinstating the Summit Ave extension in the CIP, and in their analysis and recommendation, they noted that this project is an essential component in realizing the vision of the 2012 Kensington sector plan. And as has been noted before, this has been discussed for decades. The town of Kensington itself has done a great deal of work in the last couple of years. They've worked with the Urban Land Institute, which we reviewed on this committee in more depth last year. We don't need to go through that again, and have discussed over the years how this is much more than a road project, but really is essential for the town of Kensington and our entire county. So I'd ask that we reinstate this.
One second.
Yeah.
Yep. We all support the district council members' motion, and Groundhog Day is a fair way of saying that, and that extends to my first term as well. So we've been working towards this, and appreciate your continued advocacy and leadership.
Gary Alvin, Office of Management and Budget. Just one point of clarification there. When you say restoring the funding, does that mean starting in FY30 as was previously approved?
Yeah, we can do as previously approved. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We won't go back to 2025 or 2024, so.
Thank you, and council staff can work with OMB and MCDOT to provide that updated schedule adjusted for inflation by the committee's next work session on March 2nd. We can include
Thank
that. Moving on to our the final subcategory up for review today is the pedestrian facilities and bikeways subcategory. This program is sort of the other to see a significant decrease. This is the executive is recommending $161 million for this subcategory over the 6 years. This is a $70 million or roughly 30% decrease from FY 25 to 30 approved levels. This decrease can largely be broken down into two pieces. First is the Forest Glen Passageway project being pushed out beyond 6 years to free up geobond capacity elsewhere in the CIP per the executive's recommendations. And the other component of this are the Rockville and Gaithersburg transportation improvements projects. These projects came over to the council and were reviewed by this committee as MOUs and supplemental appropriations in earlier or at the end of autumn and winter of 2025. So these are not really material decreases. It's just that this funding was placed in FY 26 and appropriated there, but remains as impact tax funding for projects within Rockville and Gaithersburg, and money other of those impact tax dollars are programmed within a couple transit projects that you'll see on March 2nd. So there is a long list of consent projects on page 18 of the staff report. There are a good deal of increases to these projects, all of which are to reflect inflation or increases in construction costs, and are not material scope changes or increases in funding or changes in timeline, other than some operational delays. Moving on to the bicycle pedestrian priority area improvements, which I will refer to from now on as the acronym BIPA, so I don't have to say that whole thing again. The executive recommends a $5.1 million increase to the Purple Line BIPA project. Roughly $4 million of this is to address increased construction costs, while $1 million is to include additional improvements identified in the 2021 Purple Line Station Access Study. $3.3 million of this total $5.1 million increase is funded by state aid via Purple Line funding.
Councilmember Stewart.
Great, thank you. Again, I was looking at the planning board had recommended, and they had recommended increased funding for Purple Line BIPA improvements, including a side path on Brookville Road extended to where people would be walking and biking to the station, and a discussion of bike lanes on Littonsville Place right at the station for area residents. And I just wanted to get whoever the appropriate person is regarding what we're funding with this CIP for Purple Line BIPA projects in that area, and reactions to the Purple Line to the planning board's recommendation.
Good afternoon. Joe Mogus, Chief of Division of Transportation Engineering. The Purple Line BIPA access study did cite one of the segments was the Littonsville area, and we are including that in our efforts. It is not included for any of the more significant sub-projects, but we have already implemented short-term improvements there. That was actually the construction that you noticed when we did that walk last year. So work is ongoing, and we do have some midterm solutions for that area as well.
Okay, great. Maybe we could talk more in depth because of the recommendation from the planning department and what that means in terms of the work that's getting done and the potential of what they see as potential work to be there. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Thank you. So moving on to the Capitol Crescent Trail project, which provides for the extension of the Capitol Crescent Trail along the Purple Line alignment from its current terminus in Bethesda to connect to the Silver Spring Green Trail. The executive recommends a $4.1 million increase to this project within the 6-year period to address increased construction costs. This increase is in addition to an assumed $4.9 million increase in FY26. So in total, you'll see an $8.9 million increase, net increase to this project. The $4.9 million increase would be for FY26 to add a third phase of the project, a path through Elm Street Park to connect the current terminus of the surface trail on Willow Lane through the Elm Street Park to the trail component on the Purple Line alignment that's set to open this summer. This second increase, or rather prior increase of $4.9 million, was requested on January 15th by the executive along with the CIP via a supplemental appropriation. MCDOT requested and the committee did table this supplemental appropriation due to ongoing contracting and scoping work, which MCDOT can speak to in more detail. Because this $4.9 million is assumed in this requested CIP as part of prior funding in FY26. So council staff will work to make sure that between the supplemental appropriation and the CIP, that this is all ironed out prior to the council's approval of the CIP in May. So there may be minor adjustments to this project as well as eventually a supplemental appropriation to cover FY26.
Director, did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. So we're working hard to get the trail connections in Bethesda complete as the Purple Line opens and in the Capitol Crescent Trail between Silver Spring and Bethesda opens. We have a design package that's complete for this work that was described for that supplemental appropriation. We received bids that were astronomically high for that work and are looking to see how we can package that work differently and have a different delivery schedule that might bring those bids down into a more reasonable affordability perspective. I will note that these phase 2 of the Capitol Crescent Surface Trail will be complete this spring, and that will provide a linkage all the way from the promenade in Elm Street Park through to the Capitol Crescent Trail west of Bethesda headed towards the Potomac River. So connections will be possible, but we are now working to figure out how to get that final piece of trail in the reconstruction of the north end of the Elm Street Park into the realm of affordability.
Thank you. Mr. Kenny?
Thank you. Moving on to the Cherry Hill Road bike facility. The project scope for this project is approved in the FY 25 to 30 CIP covered Cherry Hill Road from US 29 to the Prince George's County line. That original scope was largely illustrative in nature and not based on concrete cost estimates, as the intent of the project was to program $4 million in state aid received to build a bicycle facility on Cherry Hill Road. The executives recommended CIP is a reflection of, it does not change the funding level, as this is just programming this $4 million in state aid, but reduces the scope from the illustrative design or length from US 29 to the Prince George's County line to about a quarter of a mile stretch between Plum Orchard Drive and Gracefield Road.
And just so I better understand that, the amount in the amount that is suggested is in addition to the $4 million from the state, or is that part of?
No, these projects were developed very late in the CIP development, the last cycle when state aid was received. And since then, we've been able to understand what can be afforded with the state aid that was delivered. So the project scope has been adjusted to match the funding, rather than adding more funding to complete more scope.
Was this project started because of the state grant?
Yes.
And spell out what, so it's 7.3 million? Is that, I'm just trying to,
No, it's the 4.0 million, 4.05 million.
oh, I'm on,
Apologies, yes,
Try-
it's on.
I was looking at the above that.
The
Thank
project
you.
is split between
Thank
two
you.
pages.
that,
I think there's some slippage in the funds to reflect the schedule. When the funds were received, we just popped them in the CIP. There was no set schedule. There was no set scope. It was, we'll do what we can for 4 million. Some money was added in the last CIP for the staff charges that are not reimbursable against grant, but there is no increase in the dollars. I think what you're seeing is some shifting of the dollars to match up to the realistic production schedule.
is this project being continued on the Prince George's side?
So we're just really redefining the limits of the project to what can be built with the $4 million. We originally laid out from 29 to the Prince George's line, and now we're actually able to define where we can build up to.
Understood. So you're given $4 million to do something, and this is
Truth in
what the
budgeting, this
department
is-
has come up with.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is what we can do.
Understood, because I'm looking at it, and a $1,000 linear foot bike lane is not optimal, but I understand the constraint of the project and the funding. Okay. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you. Moving on to the Forest Glen Passageway Project, which provides for the design, right-of-way construction, utility relocations, and construction of a new grade-separated connection under Georgia Avenue to provide access to the Forest Glen Metro Station from neighborhoods and institutions located on the east of Georgia Avenue. The executive recommends delaying this project beyond the 6-year period and relocating geobonds elsewhere in the CIP. His recommendation also reflects an updated cost estimate for the project, increasing the total by $19 million or 40%.
Yeah.
It's a very expensive, difficult project.
And I know. 20 years ago, first talking about that. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you. Moving on to the Life Sciences Center Loop Trail, which would be a 12-foot wide shared use path recommended by the Great Seneca Science Corridor Master Plan. This project was initially added to the CIP as a staging trigger for the Great Seneca Science Corridor Master Plan, with the expectation that it would be 100% funded by developer contributions. For several reasons, those developer contributions have not materialized, both in the development pipeline and just the material, reality and operational reasons of the design of this project. So if the project were to continue, it would need to be funded with additional geobonds rather than developer contributions. Instead, the executive recommends delaying the project out beyond 6 years.
Is the lack, and this is probably for OMB, is the lack of funding, or let me just ask it that way, what is the lack of funding because of?
Well, it was always, Greg Brinnell, OMB, assumed that, as Mr. Kenny said, it would be paid by developers, but that money never materialized. They built their own sections, so money was never going to ultimately be funneled to the county.
Okay, so I guess that's the heart of the question. Were they expected to voluntarily provide funding for this, or was it part of the development process?
The previous version of the Great Seneca Science Corridor Master Plan identified funding of this project as a staging trigger to allow more development. That funding, the council then added this project funded by contributions at around that time when that staging trigger was being reached, such that additional development could occur in this area, but it was identified as contributions. What's actually been occurring is that elements of the pathway have been constructed with adjacent development. So there's a diagram on page 21. The segment on Fields Road and DeCoverly Drive that's in blue is got pedestrian and bike facilities completed on it. That a number of those were completed with the redevelopment of Crown Farm. Some of them are older and not necessarily what you would want if you were designing new, but there are facilities as you reach the edge of the Crown development and go into the other townhouse and apartment communities that are south of there. Similarly, the piece that's labeled Omega Drive is being completed by MCPS as part of the Crown High School construction. The green section has pedestrian and bike facilities on it, but again, not large width facilities, and that's the medical center area that's been developed for several decades now. The Bellward Campus Drive component on the left side of the diagram, a big component of that was constructed with the Grove redevelopment project and the former PSTA. And then there's a segment that would be unlikely to be completed between the blue and the red through the former GlaxoSmithKline campus, where there's little redevelopment opportunity. So if you were to implement this project, you would be replacing existing facilities with slightly upgraded facilities and doing some of the branding of the Life Science Loop Trail that had been contemplated. But even without the project, a large component of the pedestrian bike facilities that this was going to deliver are being delivered through redevelopment.
Thank you for walking us through that. Councilmember.
Yes, thank you. I looked at this for many years in the Great Seneca Science Corridor Plan. Your explanation of all the pieces that have been in place, they're not all conjoined, but they are in place. At what point does this project just go away as opposed to being pushed out, or is that what's happening here? When does the PDF go away?
This is being pushed out. The council could elect to make it go away if that were your preference.
I guess my question is, how does that happen? Because we've looked at we've done other projects where if we know it's not going to be built.
Yeah, sure.
So one of the things we're doing, this was originally proposed as the entirety of the loop trail, what Director Conklin just described as what others have already accomplished. We rewrote the scope of this, so the green piece is really what the county had to design. That is in the design process. We will take that to the completion of design and await funding to actually implement it. That's the shift from contribution to the bond. So when it is affordable due to fiscal capacity, that piece can be implemented. But the project scope is being rewritten to really just reflect the piece that the county would need to implement and not do the other pieces that have already been addressed by development.
Okay.
We would not go in the Crown and rip that up, and there's no intent to move houses. It's not to the
Right.
desired cross-section, but it's sufficient to carry a trail.
And I'd just like to clarify that funding has been removed in the out years. So as Mrs. Mullinan just said, you're going to, the part that's completed, but the construction funds have been zeroed out in the PDF.
Okay, thank you.
I suspect there will be future conversations of how we balance the CIP, so we can revisit this at a future time. But for now, let's keep going.
Thank you. Moving on to the MacArthur Boulevard Bikeway Improvements Project, which provides a shared use path improvements along 4.7 miles of MacArthur Boulevard from 495 to the District of Columbia line, as well as from Stable Lane, as well as pavement rehabilitation from Stable Lane to the I-495 underpass, and the other segments included before. There's a map on the bottom of page 21 depicting the three segments of this project. The executive recommends an increase of $4 million for this project, as well as a one-year delay to cover additional pavement rehabilitation on segment 1, and an updated estimate for segment 3. The MacArthur Boulevard is under control of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers due to the presence of the Washington Aqueduct, and so the sort of permitting and licensing to do work on this road grows complex. The idea of this increase is to do more work all at once while the county has access to it, so to do more pavement rehabilitation along with the pedestrian and bikeway facilities, so that this can be done all at once and not have to go through this process again in a
While we have control
period
of
of
the
time.
road, let's do as much as we can. Okay. Makes sense.
And finally, last project we have on the slate today is the Oak Drive, Maryland 27 sidewalk in Damascus. The various phases of the project are described in the staff report and are depicted in the maps on page 22 of the project. The executive recommends removing phase 3 from the project to create geobond capacity elsewhere in the CIP. This is a segment of sidewalk starting at the southern entrance of Oak Drive and ending at the existing sidewalk on Ridge Landing Place. Council staff recommends moving phase 3 beyond 6 years rather than removing it, to leave open the possibility of returning to the full alignment as recommended in the 2006 Damascus Master Plan and the 2018 Bicycle Master Plan. MCDOT provided a cost estimate for this increase, which is roughly to retain this component of the project and push it out beyond 6 years, and this would be about $14.3 million. So to keep the project, the council staff recommendation is to retain all elements of the project, but acknowledging fiscal capacity to move segment 3 out beyond 6 years rather than removing it from the project entirely.
And so phase 1, as I'm looking at the PDF, phase 1 is to clearly facilitate safety near Baker Middle School, right?
Phase 1 is complete.
Okay.
So
then-
phase 2 connects what's been completed to Damascus High School
Got it.
and Lakes
Thank you.
Community Center, Middle School, and High School to the sidewalk.
Okay.
Yeah, so phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 is what you're seeing funded in FY 27 and 28 at roughly $7 million. And then phase 3, which would be the extension south of Oak Drive, would be the roughly $14.3 million out beyond 6 years.
So another way to say this is that in a few years, we'll have a new sidewalk leading to a new high school. Different conversation.
Don't know if you've made decisions on high schools.
Different committee, but
Yes.
we're optimistic here. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I do want to circle back, Mr. Kenny. We're done with this portion, right?
Correct.
Okay. I just want to go back more broadly to the beginning of this section with just the consent items and pedestrian facilities. I was recently touring parts of Bethesda with some residents, particularly around Bradley and Wilson. And I know that they'd long been advocating for sidewalks, but there are other projects that are in that general area that are in other sections of the budget. And so the big takeaway picture is, while we're talking about these items here, what are we not talking about that might be in other aspects, either of the, presumably it would be the operating budget, but are there other things that are tucked away that were not fully discussed?
Well, the specific example you brought up, the Bradley and Wilson intersection, is an intersection and spot improvement project that's in the traffic scope that was in the consent projects you talked about today.
earlier, right?
earlier. I think the Bradley Bikeway might have been in that list too. Mr. Kenny may remember more directly,
The
but
Bradley Boulevard. I'm noticing now that this may have been an error on staff's part, that the Bradley Boulevard Bikeway Improvements Project is recommended in the executive's CIP to remain out beyond 6 years, where it was in the amended. This was not reflected in the table of the consent projects. So we can note this quickly in the next staff report just to make sure it's part of the public record. But this is a standalone project for this area of Bradley Boulevard that is currently beyond 6 years, and the executive would recommend that it remain so.
Okay.
and then also covered in this packet in the level of efforts in the consent were the sidewalk programs and the Safe Routes to School program is an element of the pedestrian safety program that was in this project that also complete sidewalks in these areas. So, and then if there are neighborhood traffic calming, that was also covered in the traffic improvements areas that didn't have significant changes in the funding levels.
So, right, so those other projects, there are other projects not identified at the scope or level of these, but just making sure that we're noting that, and Mr. Kenny, you'll amend the packet to include that as well.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm correct. I misspoke earlier. Life Sciences Center does have funding in beyond 6 years. I was looking at a wrong version of it. So it still exists as of this point,
But beyond 6 years.
beyond 6 years.
Okay. Great. I don't see any other famous last words. Councilmember Malcolm.
Thank you. And Chair Glass alluded to this at one of his prior comments. This is our first budget session for the FY27 budget. CIP will go to operating. And I think it's just really important to convey to the community that the committee, thank you, Mr. Kenny, for your packet, and we agreed with the packet with the exception of adding back Summit Avenue. But this is just the start of it. The decisions that we make today this is our best decision at this point in time. When we get the full budget, when all the committees come together and look at the total budget and the total revenue, things change. And I just want to say that, I might say that every time, because the community gets confused that we have agreed to these projects, and those decisions aren't made until the very end. So I just wanted to say that.
Appreciate you saying that. I know Councilmember Stewart, as chair of GO, has been saying this in various ways quite frequently. And I'll augment what you said. We support all of these projects and recognize the need for them. The next conversations will be about how we afford to pay for these projects. Okay. So we're in agreement. Without objection, we'll accept staff recommendations at this point in time. Yep. Thank you. And then there is one other item on the agenda, and that second item is a supplemental for the Wheaton parking facility renovations. This is a supplemental appropriation that would program $34,650 in state aid to convert existing non-LED lighting fixtures to LED lighting in the Wheaton parking lot district. That will reduce energy and greenhouse gas emissions in the Wheaton PLD. Mr. Kenny.
Thank you. I don't have a ton to add. The racial equity impact assessment done by ORESJ found that this project, the supplemental, has the potential to advance racial equity and social justice in the county. And there's no fiscal impact on the general fund, as this is a programming of state aid. And I'll note again that it was assumed in the CIP project that we talked about earlier as being part of the FY26 appropriation.
Very straightforward, and it's already paid for, and that's great. And we'll approve that without objection. With that, MCDOT, thank you to you and all of your staff who came prepared to answer our questions. Thank you, OMB, as well. And Mr. Kenny, we will continue this conversation.
Thank you for your consideration today.
20